They brainwashed you into thinking that government power somehow connotes goodness, and it does not. It is the use of force against peaceful people, and it doesn't matter what reason you think you have or what good you think you're going to accomplish. You are corrupting your own soul.
Haman Nature, a journey in search of a peaceful and prosperous society with human nature as a guide. Led by your host, Adam Haman.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Haman Nature. With me, as always, is my trusty sidekick, Tyrone.
Hello, good sir.
How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Spring is here. Weather's starting to warm up. My grass actually needs to be mowed.
It's glorious. Spring is coming. It is glorious. Well, today you have a treat for us. We have a little, it's like in school when they rolled the projector through the aisles and you knew it was going to be a great day because they were going to show you a video. Tyrone, ladies and gentlemen, has a video for us to watch. And I don't know. I haven't seen this clip before, but I'm told we might have something to say about it.
So, we're both old enough. You remember video day was actually like old film reels.
Film reels. That's right.
You had to rewind. Oh my God. All right. Kids these days don't even know what we're talking about.
They don't know.
Yeah. So, Adam, as you know, but our viewers might not know, I'm a huge fan of a couple of other comedians and other political type of shows. One being the Jimmy Dore Show, and one being Due Dissidence. Now, what I love about these types of shows is, or these two shows in particular, even though I think they would say, and we would certainly say, we would consider them to be on the left, maybe more of your traditional sort of old school 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, 1990s type of Democrat, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want to call them more like a red-pilled left or philosophy, but you know, they're very sort of against a lot of the things that we would be against, such as, you know, vaccine mandates or the transgender stuff that's going on right now. But they're still on the left, so they're still for things like, you know, universal health care or things like that we might criticize from a different perspective. But what I think is important is that the criticism of both sides, the criticism of the right that comes from the right and the criticism of the left that comes from the left, I think is more powerful and more valuable. So even if we can't agree with them on everything, I think their analysis, especially when they're critiquing quote unquote their own side, is really powerful, really insightful, and worth watching and paying attention to and embracing.
The mental model I use for the people like you're talking about, Jimmy Dore is one, Bill Maher I think is one, Glenn Greenwald for sure, probably someone like Edward Snowden, but people of the left that didn't get swept all the way into the woke insanity as so many others have over the last couple of decades. Those people must feel politically homeless, and I have a lot of respect for them. And you're right, when their side gets criticized by people who are clearly in the camp of the left, I think it comes off as a lot more powerful. The message will get through and find reception in a way that if, you know, somebody like Sean Hannity was going on a rail, it would just be white noise. Like, who cares?
Exactly right. Glenn Greenwald's another fabulous example. But yeah, and then Tucker Carlson's a great example of the right criticizing the right, if
Right.
you want to call it that. So I mean, we're not going to agree with them on a lot of things, but I think it's important. Those are important voices. The thing about the Due Dissidence guys is they continually use some terminology that just sort of bugs me, sort of gets my goat, so to speak, every time they use it. And one of those phrases is basically criticizing capitalism, and they'll refer to it as like late stage capitalism or something like that. with the idea that the system that we're in is a capitalist system. And so I'm maybe I'm too old school. Maybe I can't get rid of my old sort of emotional ties to a word like capitalism, but I still think it's a great word. And it represents sort of my economic philosophy very well. So I want to fight. I want to fight for the terminology. I want to fight for the philosophy, the ideology. So when someone I really respect uses the term in what I consider to be the incorrect way, I end up screaming at the screen, "No, you're not criticizing the right things." So, we have our own show now. I thought, hey, everybody else online does these reaction videos. Let's pull a clip and we can react to it and at least say our piece. Does that sound good to you, Adam?
Let her rip.
I'm going to play a short clip from the Jimmy Dore Show, but it's not actually Jimmy Dore himself. It's the guys from Due Dissidence sitting in as guest hosts, and it's Russ and Keaton from Due Dissidence. So as this goes along, Adam, we can stop it at any time and react to it or just let it go. So let's go ahead and give this a view.
It wouldn't be a show without Boeing almost killing somebody. This time, actually, it might have warmed up to Boeing a little bit if it had worked out, because the theoretical victim would have been Anthony Blinken. Blinken, U.S. delegation drive from Paris to Brussels, maybe ran into Jimmy over there, after his plane again suffers a mechanical issue. You can't make it up. So you always get the impression they must have like the best, absolutely foolproof planes for the government, but not if you get them from Boeing. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and an American delegation were forced to drive from Paris to Brussels to attend a NATO meeting Wednesday after his plane was again grounded due to a mechanical issue, the State Department said. The incident involving the aircraft identified by Bloomberg as a modified Boeing 737 happened after Blinken's travel plans were upended in January, when the plane he was using to visit Davos, Switzerland for the World Economic Forum's annual meeting encountered what the State Department described as a mechanical issue as well. So this is the second time that the Secretary of State cannot take off because his plane was made by Boeing. Due to a mechanical issue with the aircraft, Secretary Blinken and the American delegation drove from Paris to Brussels to attend the NATO foreign ministers meeting, a State Department spokesperson said Wednesday, following the latest incident. The trip between the French and Belgian capitals is about a 4-hour, 200-mile journey. Blinken had met with French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris on Tuesday. In January, the State Department said the U.S. Air Force sent a replacement plane to Switzerland to bring Blinken home from the meetings in Davos. After that event, the aircraft he was traveling in was unable to take off due to a mechanical issue. We covered the other day the poop plane. There was a plane that had to turn back to Hamburg because it flooded with feces from the toilet.
Hey, pause the video. Poop plane? That sounds like a party, man.
Who knew the end of an empire would be so hilarious? I don't know this fellow. I don't watch this show, but I do have to say, anybody who can sort of giggle at the thought that an agent of the military-industrial complex killing the Secretary of State through an accident, it's not a bad thing. I kind of like him. I kind of like him.
This is Russ. He's great. It's too bad the plane didn't crash like right into the building where the whole Davos crowd was at, right? Except I don't want to wish like anything bad like on the pilots or the service crew that might be on the plane, right? So if there was a way they could parachute out safely, I'd be all right.
Well, slow down, Tyrone. I mean, it's only April.
I know, right? So I think I want to get a shirt that says poop plane on it. I love it. So
no,
right, anyway, let's continue.
Absolutely.
Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said at the time. So this is David Sirota. Really wild that the Secretary of State is a former Boeing consultant who keeps being unable to fly the Boeing planes that his State Department simultaneously pitches to other governments. That's what Mr. John Lennon might have called instant karma there. Karma. Anything, Keaton?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is a shame that well, actually, I shouldn't say it's a shame. I mean, it's good that he was caught on a plane and had to turn around. I was going to say, shame it didn't go down, but we won't say that.
that is over the line, Keith.
That is over the line.
That is over
that would
the
be
line.
over the line. Yeah, indeed. So yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe that'll catch the focus of Mayor Pete there. Hey, you almost took down one of your. almost looked at one of your cabinet members there.
I mean if that is not late capitalism.
Yeah, I see what you're talking about, Tyrone, but I wanted to pause this for just a second.
Yeah.
I assume that if typical lefty broadcasters were talking about this issue, they would, I don't know, maybe throw a hint of shade at the maintenance people who are filthy Trump supporters or something, and
Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
sabotaging all ends. But anyway, let's get back to their complaint about economic systems here.
Imperial collapse. I don't know what is. I mean, that's crazy. That's like, the Visigoths are coming, but none of the chariots are working. I mean,
Right,
it's just every part of the empire has become so corrupt that it can't even build conveyances for the government that are trustworthy.
Well, this is what I said. I mean, I think I said this on our show a while ago. It's like Boeing, by financializing their business model, because this marked a shift. I mean, they used to be about making the best machines, figuring that if we make the best machines, we'll sell the most airplanes and we will be at the top of the market. And that was true for a while. Now, that probably would have remained true even if they didn't shift models no matter what. But in Boeing's case, you have a guaranteed cash flow by the United States government.
Right.
Like your military industrial complex, you got it coming in every year anyway. So like there's no reason to do what they did.
Well, and you've got the next best thing to a monopoly, a duopoly.
Right.
It's basically you and Airbus.
Pause it there.
Well,
With a few minor.
So they've already. So one of the things I want to criticize here is, so they're using the term capitalism and then juxtaposing it with imperialism, and then saying you've got this duopoly, aka really kind of a legal monopoly, right? But then also Boeing is being subsidized by the military. They are part of the military industrial complex. So what of any of that is capitalist, right?
As soon as he let off there with the hat tip to the Visigoths et al., I was wondering, does he believe that at any point in the Roman Republic turned empire, that was something called capitalism? And it actually, I haven't heard these guys before, but I'm inclined to give them the benefit of the doubt. If maybe they are simply saying any system that gets corrupted by government power they're going to say that it becomes late stage capitalism or something. Because obviously at no time was the Roman system a capitalist system. They don't have any free markets. And I certainly wouldn't say, I mean, what other empires are there that collapsed? Even the English one, they had companies, but they also had massive elements of fascism in there, the quote unquote public private partnerships of everything that had to do with trade and colonialism and even stuff in home. So it's interesting. I think when we're done with this video, you and I are going to talk a lot about terms and economic systems. And I think I might end up being sympathetic if I can disentangle what the words they're using are from the point they're trying to make.
No, 100%. They're spot on. That's why it frustrates me, because I love these guys. I think they're analyzing the situation correctly. It's just, I think they're mixing up ideas, or perhaps they're not clear on the ideas or the terminology. And again, my concern is, if you want to call something late stage capitalism and say that's in its own category, the obvious problem is you're attaching the word capitalism to it. So by association, you're giving a negative connotation towards capitalism.
You're giving a clue as to what economic system you're in. It's a Marxist one, and that tells you about what you want to replace this so-called capitalism with, which is not good.
That's right. So I think sometimes the point that they miss is they've been on this Boeing thing for quite a while, and so have I. It's absolutely disgusting, but they've done several episodes on the Boeing issues, and they've used the old sort of thing you would hear a lot from people on the left. There's not enough regulations, there's not enough oversight of these things, and I think the point I'm really trying to emphasize here is you're trying to solve a problem. You've identified the problem as well. Maybe they haven't identified the problem, but to you and me, to me at least, I would say the problem is government interference. The reason why planes are falling out of the sky, in our opinion, in my opinion, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Adam, is because the government has corrupted the system. And so you can't solve the problem with the thing that caused the problem. So I think maybe they don't have the economic I don't know, knowledge that we have, and see the world the way that we see it, in that it's the government that is creating these incentives it's the government that's creating the moral hazard.
Let's finish out this video. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure I get everything before I launch in, but
Okay.
it does strike me as curious that they point out a flawed system with a government-imposed monopoly,
Right.
which is basically what Boeing is, and it's producing crappy products for the populace, and they think they can solve that problem of a private-public partnership by eliminating the private part.
Right.
As if government functionaries are going to build planes better.
Right.
I think they might be missing something, but let's see what these guys have to say for the remainder here.
It's in the space,
Right.
and the bar to
Right.
entry is so high that there's not even going to be a third as long as you keep making. Now there will be, but if you
now there will be.
Now there will be, because
Sure.
there has to be, to fill the void that's going to be left with Boeing, because of, I keep saying it, man. I hope I'm wrong. Eventually, one of these is going to go down, and that's going to be it. They're going to have to ground them all. They're going to have to
Well, that's the
ground
thing.
all the Boeings and go back through and see what they fucked up.
Well, right. And like I said, absent a catastrophic failure, they have guaranteed money coming in. That's why Boeing, you ever notice if you watch like the Sunday morning talk shows, Face the Nation, Meet the Press, you'll quite often see a Boeing ad on there. That Boeing ad on there is not because the average American's in the market for a 737 and are picking and choosing which brand to buy it from. That's an open air bribe to the networks to cover wars favorably, so that the government keeps buying Boeing planes. Like that's what it is. And that is locked in. That's locked in. That wasn't going anywhere. Now it might. I mean, if they can't trust the Secretary of State on an airplane, it might.
I mean, the commercials on the Sunday morning roundtables it's like a lineup of comic book villains. It's like the Legion of Doom. You just have all of the most evil corporations on the planet, one after the other. Archer Daniels Midland, Northrop Grumman, Boeing. Like, the bribery is so transparent that they're putting it on there to both bribe these news stations, but also to really pacify the minds of the NPCs who watch that and absorb it as meaningful information.
All right, Adam. So there's the whole clip. I'm huge fans of these guys. I know this is your first time seeing it. So what was your do you have any follow-up reaction to it?
Well, I mean, it's not quite fair. Obviously, I haven't seen the full body of work of these people. But boy, that said, it does seem to be either the analysis of somebody who's trapped in an ideological prism, where they just know the government has to be the good guys somehow. And if it wasn't for these dirty capitalists messing up my beautiful government, we'd have something beautiful here. And I can't it shocks me that people can't come out of that system. It almost seems childish. I don't want to call these gentlemen childish. They're far more successful than I am, but it does seem like they're trapped in a prison of their own ideological making, especially when they're using terms like late stage capitalism. I mean, that is a mind trapped in a very, very flawed economic system. They obviously don't know where wealth comes from if they believe anything that incorporates the labor theory of value into it. I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard him speak about what democracy is or why government power is supposed to be such a blessed thing. But how many times do we have to learn that power corrupts? And the power that we're talking about everywhere and always is political power.
Right.
That is a corrupting influence. And if you're wondering why planes are falling out of the sky, and you know there's a massive corrupting influence in this industry and in this particular company by government, you maybe ought to rethink your economic system if you can't see the government as the problem here.
That was almost perfect for the hero. Your fly is down.
So, hey,
well,
hero,
speaking of which,
your fly's down.
we have a segment on this show called "Hey Hero, Your Fly is Down." I'm gonna take it this time, Adam. Okay,
run with it.
Hey, Russ and Keaton, I love you guys. You are awesome. Keep up the good work. I love the criticism. You're getting it. You're almost right there. You are identifying the correct symptoms and you're scratching at the surface of the problems. But please, for the love of all that is good and holy, whatever you may believe, stop calling it capitalism. We do not live in a capitalist society. I would argue America has never been a capitalist society. And the thing you are really criticizing is imperialism or corporatism or the oligarchy. But the thing you are really criticizing here is the state. The state is our enemy. So, Russ and Keaton, I would implore you, take some time, read Anatomy of the State by Murray Rothbard, and then let's have a conversation. I love you guys. You're the best. Keep up the great work. But, hero, your fly is down. All right. So I hope the guys at Due Dissidence and Jimmy Dore Show appreciate what do you want to call it? What is the saying about the greatest form of flattery is
that's supposed to be parody, I think,
or something. Okay,
yeah.
I don't know, whatever. But Keaton, I will remind you that on a recent episode, you did say you were saying how no one's ever clipped you and has done a reaction video to you. So I hope we're the first, and I hope you appreciate it for what it is. So don't come down on us too hard. But Adam, I really want to make this point. To me, it's important. So terminology is important. The terms we use are important because if the meanings behind our words that we use when we're speaking aren't the same, then we're basically speaking a foreign language to each other and we can't have a conversation. So for me, it's very important that we define terms like capitalism. And I've really struggled over the years to keep on using that term because it has become so corrupted. It has just become this term to mean America. Like whatever America is capitalism, but to me that's not what it is. And I don't know if it's pointless to try to fight that fight and we should come up with another term and just abandon the word capitalism altogether. But I don't know. I don't want to give up on it. What are your thoughts on that? Do we just need a new term and surrender the term capitalism?
Well, let's give the devil its due a little bit. Unless I'm greatly mistaken, capitalism was invented by Karl Marx as a slur.
It was invented by Karl Marx, so I am willing to give it up just for that reason alone.
Well, the reason I bring it up is because he brought it up as a slur to describe a system he thought was scientifically destined historically to decline and turn into socialism or communism or whatever the end state of his system was. But we should bear in mind that when he was speaking and writing, the system he lived in that he was calling capitalism wasn't free markets. there was a government in Germany, right? Had to be German, that was influencing in crony ways, as they always have, the interaction between sellers and buyers of goods and services. So the thumb was on the scale, and um, if he's observant enough to see that the government, the powerful, control the government, and the government controls the markets, and we're calling this system capitalism, well, we have a name for that, capitalism or cronyism, but it's not a free market.
Right.
So maybe, maybe Marx had a point. He just didn't know what the actual problem was.
Right.
So I don't use capitalism that much. I usually try and, talk about free markets as opposed to some other system. And the way I use that taxonomy is that on one end of the spectrum is totally free markets. The government doesn't even exist, ideally.
Right.
But if it does, all it is doing is protecting property rights and preventing people from exercising violence and fraud and theft upon one another. Total freedom. No regulations whatsoever, except do not cause physical harm or fraud, perhaps, violate contracts, that sort of thing. And then on the other end of that system, on varying degrees, are all the different interventions that you can get where the state is involved in some manner. And when the touch is light, we don't react that much. Only a few hidden cronies are getting rich, and we don't notice. And as it gets heavier and heavier, planes start falling out of the sky, for example. And
right.
and then what you call it, whether it's fascism or socialism or some kind of communism or Ayn Rand or people in that time period would call it like the third way. And that's just an enormous category of everything that's not either complete free markets or complete the state owns all the means of production, everything more complicated than a toothbrush and a washcloth. And so when I discuss these terms, the system I want is free markets. I don't even bother with capitalism anymore unless we're just shorthand. And these lefties that I want to court, because obviously their heart is in the right place, and they want to travel from New York to LA without dying, say.
Yeah.
I want to get him to understand
what commies they are for all I know.
I just want him to get him to understand what the problem is.
Right.
Gentlemen, if I can have your attention for just a moment. You were indoctrinated by a government institution from K through 12, more if you went to a state subsidized institution of higher learning, and they brainwashed you into thinking that government power somehow connotes goodness, and it does not. It is the use of force against peaceful people, and it doesn't matter what reason you think you have or what good you think you're going to accomplish. If you use force, the initiation of force to do it, the means are the ends. You are corrupting your own soul when you do that, and it should be no surprise that you end up making crappy airplanes when you've introduced force into the equation. It doesn't matter what market we're talking about. You pervert the free exchange between peaceful people giving what they want and getting what they want on a free exchange. And if you pervert that because you think you've got some sort of God complex, put the ring of power down. You are not worthy to wear it. No one is. And shake yourself loose of the myth of government goodness that was given to you, guess where, in government schools.
Well said, man. Woo, got chills. So I think what you said there is super important. And this was certainly something I had to learn just through getting older, I think, and just constantly getting into sort of philosophical or political arguments with friends and family, and realizing we're starting at the wrong, we're arguing from false premises or the wrong starting point. I think we should start at the end instead. People like the Due Dissidence guys have the same goals that we have. They want to see, the reason why they're so in favor of like single payer healthcare systems, for example, is because I don't know, it's not because they're evil government, one world government type guys. They don't want people to be sick and dying and broke when they go to the doctor. Well, I want that too. The difference being is I think the libertarian free market system would provide you, would get you what you want, better instead of a government run healthcare system. I want people to be healthy. I want people to be wealthy. I want people to be wise. And I just don't think the government's going to ever provide it. It's just going to make things worse and worse and worse. So I guess I am willing to surrender the word capitalism. It's just, free market just doesn't roll off the tongue very well, as best. And it's just this idea that words are powerful, right? They have meaning. They have symbolism. And so and again, gosh, we bring up Ayn Rand a lot, even though you and I aren't. Like we're like scarred post-traumatic used to be objectivists, right? But she was so smart and so good on a lot of things, and it really has influenced my way of thinking. But sometimes she would say that sometimes the best way to understand a concept is to understand what it isn't. So she would, I think, if I recall, give the example of how do you know what the difference between, say, for example, a stool and a table is, or something like that. They both have 4 legs. They both have a flat surface. It's what they don't do, or it's what they're not, that sort of helps us define the concepts. So for me, what isn't capitalism is sometimes a better way to approach the issue rather than saying what is capitalism. So what I'll sometimes say to friends or people that I get in conversation with, well, let's take a look at the world we live in. Is there a Federal Reserve? Is there a central bank? Are there things like antitrust laws? Are there things like the EPA? Are there things like et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And say, well, guess what? That's not capitalism. In a capitalist society, you wouldn't have a central bank. You would have we'll call it a gold standard or something like that, right? So in a capitalist society, and also Russ and Keaton nail the exact problem and still call it capitalist. They have identified that Boeing has a guaranteed income stream from where? The government.
Right. Yeah, it's frustrating. It's another thing I like about those guys. They are obviously reflexively anti-war. Obviously
100%.
They're lefties, and they want government to take care of the sick and the disadvantaged because they don't want suffering. But what's frustrating is they look at the current system, which is by no means anything like a free market or a voluntarist system. That's a new word that's popped up because nobody likes capitalism or free market. Anyway,
I like it. It just doesn't roll off the tongue.
Like, how can a picture the free market system before Obamacare came and made it even more of a train wreck? It was terrible.
Right.
It was by no means free market. There were government incentives and restrictions all over the place, at the federal level, at the state level, at the county level. It was just a Frankenstein mishmash of awfulness. And it takes a special kind of hypnotized, government-schooled, well-meaning person to look at that system that's been tortured to death by a Frankenstein doctor and says, you know what we need? We need a little more Frankenstein here.
We need more government.
We do. I mean, it's just, it's like that article I wrote at hamannature.substack.com talking about how government regulation reminds me of that song about the old woman who swallowed a fly and swallowed a spider. And
right.
I don't know why she swallowed the fly. It's one intervention leads to a problem, which leads to another intervention, which leads to a problem, which leads to another intervention, which leads to a problem. And we're nowhere near 2012 and Obamacare yet. We're still decades before that. But after you get all the way up to the horse and the hippo and however many animals that old lady ate in that song, that's about when Obamacare came in and just made it even more of a train wreck. So just remember, when you're analyzing the system that we live in and you're finding its flaws, like poop flying out of the lavatory and doors falling off the airplane, you're not looking at a free market. It's a Frankenstein experiment poisoned by government, which strangely enough you favor. It's not the people that are in power, it's the power. And just read a little bit more free market economics, read a little bit more Mises and Rothbard and Henry Hazlitt, and regain your faith in people, in freedom. It works better, I promise you. You don't get less cabal when you just get rid of the stock market. you just get the Soviet the system, and it's even worse. Guess what? Those planes were worse. Or
Yeah.
or the cars made by the East Germans, that famous whatever it was called.
Oh, the
I forget the
Yugo?
name. The
The
well, the
Yugo.
Yugo was a different one, but there was a
Oh,
famous car that came out of East Europe, Eastern
okay.
Germany. Oh, it's gonna kill me. The
God,
Trabant, I
the
believe.
Yugo though.
No, I can't
Man, I
remember.
remember that. Anyway. But yeah, just a couple of quick follow-up points on that before we move on, because I think this topic is important. You recently interviewed the great Jeff Deist, and he made the economic point in your discussion that there are no in economics, there are no solutions, just trade-offs. And I think, and again, and we can also use the sort of cliche phrase, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? So I think sometimes a lot of people on the left, I'll just use my sister as an example. I would call her a little bit of a bleeding heart, or she has toxic empathy, or whatever you want to call it, right? She's a super great person. She feels the pain of others, in her soul, in her being, and it really disturbs her, and she really wants to try to make the world a better place, and that is fantastic. That is a great motivation. But I think we have to understand that just the way we are as human beings, our human nature, just the way the world is and the universe is, we cannot cure poverty. We cannot necessarily cure all sadness, or all. We can't make the world perfect. So we have to be willing to accept a certain level of, let's say, tragedy in the world. So
Let's give
I, okay, go ahead.
let's give empathy its due, because I don't think there's anything wrong with it, and I only think it's toxic when you believe that the only solution to social ills is government force. If you don't believe that, if you recognize that as the exact wrong tool to do darn near anything, well, then you take your empathy and you join with other like-minded people, and you form private groups, hopefully in your neighborhood, where you do your best to make the lives of the people around you better. And as long as that's a private enterprise, you have all sorts of the good aspects of humanity influencing you and your charges, your wards, the people you're trying to help, to make that system better. They don't feel entitled. They feel like, hopefully, they're being given a favor, and maybe they're incentivized to, get their act together. Their own good nature comes out when they don't think they're just being handed a check because the government, because they're entitled to it. And they also, it's not like they think that government programs to help the poor will make a utopia. That's a bit of a straw man. What they think is it'll make it better than it is now.
Mm-mm.
And that's the correct metric. They're just wrong. The way to make
Mm.
the world better
Mhm.
than it is now. Obviously, we can't alleviate all human sadness and suffering. There's always going to be some poverty, even if we get so fabulously wealthy that what is considered poverty is just the wealth gap between the people who are doing outstandingly well and then people who are just living 2 times better than I live.
Mhm.
If we
Mhm.
have free markets or voluntarism or whatever, the poor just get richer and richer. I mean,
Right.
which country would you rather be poor in? This one or Botswana?
Right.
I don't know where
Right.
Botswana is, but you get my point.
Yeah. So I think the way the free market. I just want to give a simple example, and then see if you agree with this. And you'll probably say this a lot better than I do, because you're a bit more eloquent with the philosophy, and I get a little tongue tied, which is why I don't do really well in debates. I get a little nervous and tongue tied. So, if the Due Dissidence guys ever want to debate us on any of these topics, I'll let you do most of the talking. But suppose I had my own little pizza shop, right? And um, I somehow poisoned some pizzas, and some of my customers died because my pizzas were poisoned. I'd be out of business instantaneously. I'd be sued out of existence. No, once the word got out, no one would come to my business ever again, right? So this is how the free market handles it. Now, what someone might criticize it, yeah, but the person died. That that didn't have to happen in the first place. If we just had a government agency to come in, ahead of time, like the FDA or your local food and health and safety inspectors or whatever government agency you think might prevent this and solve this problem, you can say, look, see, if we had intervened ahead of time, then nobody had to die. And the point that I always try to constantly make to people is what Henry Hazlitt would call, or maybe it was Bastiat that said it first, but the difference between the seen and the unseen. So yeah, you can see the government agency coming in, the health and food inspector, and trying to like do something proactive. But what you aren't seeing is the consequences of that. What you aren't seeing is the resources that have been diverted from the economy to pay for these government functions that would have perhaps improved the equipment, the food quality to begin with in the restaurant, that would have perhaps prevented this in the first place. Plus, the free market has built-in incentives to prevent you from poisoning your customers, such as you don't want to go out of business. But when you have a government to come and bail you out whenever you screw something up, like they did in the 2008 banking crisis, like Boeing gets bailed out. Boeing should be out of business. They're not. Why? Because of the government.
Yeah, it's unfortunate when people put their faith in government regulations to solve quote unquote, market failures. I mean, let us not forget that the FAA exists, right? I mean, we have 1,800 trillion regulations controlling air travel, and the damn shit still flies out of the toilet and the doors still fall off. And whether it's something big like that or small like your local health department, if 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 regulating the conduct of a business such that it provides goods and services to the public safely is important, if that's a good thing that we as a developed economy, as a rich culture wants, why would we entrust that to a monopolist who has no mechanism by which to get better except the very weak read of the ballot box? Whereas if you just didn't put your faith in some health sticker or an FAA, examination or whatever, well, then you'd have 500 different competing sources of information and certification by which, if you want the one that's the safest, you'll make sure that it gets 15 ratings by the companies that you trust the most. And we have those industries now, even though the government crowds out such things because the public wants it. The public knows that you can't trust the health department. That's why we have Yelp, and that's why Consumer Reports did such a booming business for all those decades whenever they were big, 70s, 80s, 90s. Yet, obviously, businesses need pressure, societal pressure to perform better. They need competition. But don't trust that duty to a monopolist. You're going to get a terrible product. We have a terrible product in corporate regulation. Yeah, that's my monopoly rant.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. And the point I'm trying to make is like, okay, the free market isn't going to prevent all deaths. It's not going to prevent a bad actor from one time poisoning his pizzas. But all of that stuff is happening today. People are
I'm sorry.
dying today.
I'm sorry. Let me finish my monopoly rant because you just brought it up. Yeah, we do have people dying from regulations in this heavily regulated system, but now they're protected from tort as long as they followed the regulations provided to us by a
Right.
monopolist who can be bribed, by
That's
the way.
exactly right.
So you have the worst of a crony system where you're not getting protected, and as long as they followed all the rules, dotted their I's and crossed their T's, well, then what happened to you? Your death is just a tragedy, but it's not tortious. You don't have any legal recourse because they followed the government rules.
And who wrote the rules? The lobbyists who paid the politicians. I mean,
Yeah,
just
literally, the lobbyist wrote the legislation. That is how it works, guys.
just take out the government. Now look, there will be some communists who, you know, when we try to criticize and say, oh, the Soviet Union or North Korea or Cuba is terrible, see how communism fails, to say, well, that wasn't true communism. It's never been practiced. And at first I would just get into arguments with those folks, but then, you know what, I came around and said, you know what, you're right. True communism, the way you're thinking of it, hasn't been tried, because I say the same thing about capitalism. True capitalism, the way I see it in my mind, has never been tried. Never once. The closest that I think the world has ever gotten is probably the period late 1800s in the United States. But for example, under capitalism, there's no slavery. So we weren't capitalists for a long time here. There's no central bank. Well, we certainly haven't been capitalists for at least 100 years. So there was a little bit of a gap. But even then, there was so much corruption already by then in the political system in the late 1800s. But it was the closest I think the world's ever gotten. So my argument is, okay, the closest the world's ever gotten to communism is the Soviet Union. The closest the world has ever gotten to capitalism is, let's say, 1870 to 1910 in the United States. Let's compare the two and just say, well, which of these do you prefer? There's no perfect system. There's no perfect system. Just trade-offs.
Yeah, that's a bit of wisdom for Mr. Thomas Sowell. Yeah, that's one tack that I sometimes take. When they say communism has never been tried, you say free markets have never really been tried either, and that's true. And even in that period you mentioned, it wasn't that free. It was just much freer than we've ever had before or since. But I usually, when people say that to me, I just think I see a narcissist, and I don't know what to say. What he's really saying is, if I was in charge, it would have all worked out great. This is a person who looks at the bloody monarchies throughout history and says, well, if I'd been king. I mean, we never really tried monarchy, have we? Because my will was never supreme in any of these systems. It's a bit of hubris. It's claiming that the system in my head that I've just invented, where I control everything, that'll work out because I am good and pure and right and strong and smart. And anything else that was tried by any other people, well, they were just doing it wrong. And boy, oh boy, there's been a lot of bodies put into the earth under that creed.
All right, Adam. Well, that was pretty fun. Maybe we'll do some more reaction videos like that.
I'm always excited when the projector gets wheeled in between the desks. That's always a good time. That's right.
You may remember in one of our recent episodes, we started a game. All right, so this is part 2 of a game we're calling First to Ruin the World. All right, we've already had part 1 of the first round completed in a previous episode, so go back and check that one out. So today we're going to complete the round 1 and then turn it over to our viewers to vote on the second round. So
Tyrone, are you sure that our watchers and our listeners are responsible enough to decide such a thing?
I don't know if there's really a wrong answer. I really feel like any of these people or things could ruin the world first. But the way this game works is we've got 4 conferences. We've got a culture conference, a politics conference, a conspiracy conference, and a weed paree conference.
Weed paree.
So weed paree. So in part 1, in the culture conference, we pitted the amazing and awesome David Hasselhoff against Taylor Swift, and among those two, who was going to who had the better chance of ruining the world first? We came up with Taylor Swift. In the politics conference, we had Jerome Powell versus Janet Yellen. We went with Janet Yellen. Then we had in the conspiracy conference CIA versus MI6. We moved the CIA forward, and in the weed paree conference, we had Saved by the Bell versus Skynet. I argued hard for Saved by the Bell, but it's your show, Adam. You overruled, went with Skynet.
Yeah, so, this was a surprisingly difficult pick. Very contentious. You made some good points, but no, we went with Skynet.
All right. So we're going to continue on with the first round here. We're going to complete the first round of conferences. And then we're going to put it up on our Substack, hamannature.com, hamannature.substack.com. We'll get you there. We're going to put up some polls or some questions and let you vote on who should move on into the next round. So we're going to let our viewers decide that. But to complete the first round, you and I are going to go through it and pick. So we're going to begin back into the culture conference. So let's see who we have up this time in the battle of the culture. We have Tom Cruise versus Miley Cyrus.
Well,
now,
once
Adam,
again, the pictures you've chosen are amazing.
you get the final decision on this, but I don't want to influence you too bad. We've already moved one musical artist forward, although a battle between Tay-Tay and Miley would be epic. I'm not sure if the internet could handle such a conflict. But come on, man. Tom Cruise, Cocktail and Dreams. I love that movie. It's great. And plus, he's everywhere still. So he's still influential. I don't know, man. What do you think? Which of these two people have the best chance to ruin the world first?
All right. This is a good one. And let me walk you through my reasoning here. Tom Cruise gets a lot of flack for his various failures and foibles. He belongs to a cult. Some people say he makes shallow movies. And of course, his biggest failing is he's ridiculously short and tried to play Jack Reacher.
Right.
But despite that, I think the man is a cinematic genius. I love 99% of all the movies he makes. So big fan. And on the other side, you've got this utter train wreck of a human being who I hate everything about. So we're going to go with Miley. What's going on with her eyeballs in this picture, Cyrus, if you don't mind.
Sounds good, man. Sounds good. So, hey, what's your favorite Tom Cruise movie?
Oh, man.
You're going to go all the way back to like Risky Business,
no,
Top Gun, the classic 80s.
I like so many of his movies. I really loved his remake, sequel to Top Gun. But
really? I hated that movie.
Oh, I loved it. We'll have to have that.
Oh boy, we're gonna have to debate that one. All right.
He's done a lot of fun sci-fi movies I like. But my favorite of his probably
Minority Report. Great,
magnificent. And this one you've got on screen, Cocktail. That was a fun.
God, I love Cocktail. Holy crap!
But
that
my
made me
favorite
want to
of
be
his,
a bartender.
Everybody. But my favorite of his is Rain Man. I've watched it the most. I just love it, and so yeah.
Yeah, I really like that one. Oh my God, I'm blanking on the name. The one where he played the assassin for hire. And
with Jamie Foxx.
Jamie Foxx.
Yeah, it was called Manhunter, I think. Yeah, that was really good.
God, if only we had a way to look that up. But yeah, now he's done some great stuff. I really liked The Last Samurai. Vanilla Sky, I thought was very interesting. I think he's a really good actor, and he's definitely a powerhouse. I mean, most of the Mission Impossibles, I don't really like, but the first one was really good. I thought the last one was super boring. But anyway, all right. Miley Cyrus is going to possibly ruin the world first. All right. I agree with that one, although do you like my Tom Cruise? All right. So in the next conference, we've got the politics conference. We've got, the next winner of the Tour de France, Joe Biden.
He's looking spry.
Versus the savior of the world, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's going to tax the rich, and that's going to solve everything. So what do you got? What do you think?
Tricky. Your reflexive answer is going to be with President Joe Biden, because just look at him. He's clearly the most powerful man in the world, which means he could do the most damage the quickest, right? But I'm going to have to go with AOC, because as Biden's hand is decomposing on the nuclear trigger as we speak. He's not long for this world, even if they manage to get him reelected. I think even though this is a rush to ruin the world first, I think AOC is it's not going to happen, next month. It's going to happen over the next few years, and AOC is going to be around to accomplish that task. And our beloved commander-in-chief there, it probably won't.
All right. I think that's a good choice. All right. In the next conference, we've got the conspiracy conference. King Dumbledore.
For the people who are only listening to this, Tyrone has matched the brand new King Charles wielding double scepters in some bizarre coronation ceremony. He looks like a wannabe even gayer Dumbledore. And opposed is two wretched pictures.
Versus our military industrial complex friends at Boeing.
At Boeing, yeah. Picture of a airplane with a door ripped off, and then a comic cartoon of a 737 MAX 9 with
the caption,
all the screws.
Yeah. But the caption, it's instead of Boeing, it's Boing.
Because all the screws and washers fall out. Okay. So in conspiracy conference, it's King Charles versus Boeing specifically.
Yeah. So well, let's just say military industrial complex in America.
But that's a much bigger beast. That's a much bigger beast.
Versus some people say that the British Crown is really still kind of in charge of the world. They own what is it? Something sick like 60% of the landmass in the whole planet is still owned by the Crown. I mean,
I tell you what,
it's ridiculous.
I tell you what, Charles. I think the British monarchy took a significant downgrade when Elizabeth died and Charles took the throne. And I'm starting to be persuaded by nutbags like my Porcupine friend here and Tom Luongo. I'm starting to think maybe the big problem over there is these Europeans. And given all the horrible things that are in Charles's head, and now he has that kind of power, and the fact that really you only did present one plane company, even though it is part of the dastardly MIC, I'm going to take King Charles. Prince,
all right.
Now King Charles.
That's right. All right. Well, he's going to do a bang-up job once he remembers how to.
What are those things he's holding?
It looks like he's going to the bathroom.
What are those? We're going to have to look that up. Those scepters must have names that are hilarious.
I'm sure.
Amazing. The Royal Double Glob of Fubaldor.
Right. One's probably called Kingslayer.
Kingslayer.
Right? Anyway,
my,
all right.
Oh my.
And in the final conference, the Weed Paris conference, which could be any random thing, but you never know. Sometimes the destruction of the world comes from the place you least expect it. We've got Taco Bell versus McDonald's.
Choose the form of the destructor. So for the picture of Taco Bell, Tyrone, you've chosen a pink-shelled Pepto-Lupa created with Pepto-Bismol as the flour. Is that what you've done?
Is a secret ingredient. Yeah, there you go.
Is that coming out next year?
Yeah. If you eat Taco Bell, you need some Pepto.
That's actually kind of brilliant. And then Ronald McDonald, an extremely obese version of the clown, is representing McDonald's. Boy, this is a tough one. Do I go with the obvious, more influential corporate powerhouse of McDonald's, or do I believe Demolition Man and that Taco Bell is the restaurant that will win the restaurant wars?
There you go.
Will be upcoming shortly. It's a tough one. I just don't know.
You got to make a choice, man.
Well, I'm just going to say I've had way more incidents with Taco Bell than I have with McDonald's. So I'm gonna go with Taco Bell. Sandra Bullock is right. Taco Bell wins the restaurant wars. They're destroying the world.
All right. So that completes the first round of our game, First to Ruin the World. All right, so viewers and listeners, subscribers, we're going to turn this over to our Substack. We're going to put up some polls. So do your votes. Let us know who or what you think will ruin the world first, and we will reveal those answers on an upcoming episode. All right, Adam. Well, this has been fun. Anything else? Any parting words of wisdom to take us out?
This was an awful lot of fun. I'd like to thank you for all your hard work and graphic choices. And remind the listeners and viewers to go to hamannature.substack.com And you will find on top of the place to vote for all of your selections for World Destroyer, a bunch of articles that are real interesting. So please subscribe and enjoy.